Good morning. It is Tuesday morning. We're going to commence our general government meeting. It is 9:30 a.m. We have a one-item agenda for today's meeting. And can I get a motion to approve this agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as published.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we do have an agenda. So today we're gonna see Shannon Kelly Fong with the Municipal Court Services Contract Update. So you have the floor, Shannon.
Well, good morning, Mayor and Council Member. I am here to provide an update on our municipal contract. And as part of that, I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what we've been seeing the last couple of years and how we're working to a new interlocal agreement with Thurston County District Court. So I'm going to share my screen and Mr. Mayor, if you can just let us know when you can see the screen, just to confirm.
I can see it.
Perfect. I don't know why that's down there, so I'm going to move that up there. So just a little bit of background, some history looking at kind of what has been going on with the municipal court over the last couple of years. What I'm showing you here right now is filings since 2013 to present. And you can see that some of the categories have changed slightly through time as Thurston County has reorganized some of their filing categories. But the big thing that I just really wanted to point out for this body to see is that over time, our filing numbers have decreased significantly since 2013, where we had a high of around 3,300. And in 2021, we had a low of 800 or 830 around. And certainly there have been things that have, complicated, the court as we're looking at it. For example, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact. And so trying to keep that in mind as we're looking at some of this data. But even outside of that, what you can see is that trending since 2013 has been a significant decrease in court filings.
That doesn't make any, did the domestic violence just stop happening?
Yeah. Could be we're not prosecuting it.
But what's going on there?
So
Yeah.
again, they changed their categories throughout time. So you're probably seeing that actually wrapped into criminal non-traffic is where you'd see that represented. So they've just changed some of their categories and how they've sent us data from previous years. So that doesn't mean that domestic violence has fallen off the chart. It just means it's categorized as something else.
Well, let's hopefully in this contract we can have a little more specifics because that's that's big data that's
Right.
important to our
Yeah,
community.
it's hard to understand and discern with that chart.
Well, if you look at the blue category from 2013 to 2015, that's where you had your domestic violence category. And then criminal non-traffic is now representing gray. So you're not seeing a decrease in that category.
In the dark gray specifically, and you are seeing a decrease in that category, but it is still a significant category. We can break it down and recode things so that it looks a little bit more familiar throughout time. But this is the data that we received, and so we just took it and made a visual representation. The big point, though, is that filings are significantly down over time, and with filings being down, court proceedings are also down. So in this slide, what you're seeing is the court proceedings from 2013 to 2021. And very similar to what I just explained with the filings, the coding has changed over time. So you will see that, from 2013 to 2015, it's coded one way. And then from 2016 to 2021, it's coded a different way. But what you can see is that proceedings are trending downward and have been trending downward, even in a pre-pandemic environment. So we had a high proceedings in 2013 of around 9,300. And then in 2021, it has declined to around 2,800. So looking together, this graph is showing the filings and proceedings. So the filings are shown with the bar graph and the proceedings are shown with the line graph, showing that both have been declining throughout time with the filings and proceedings. Another thing that is really important for how Thurston County assesses the city of Lacey for fees is understanding the proceedings per a filing. So what I've done here is I have taken the filings and the proceedings and shown how many proceedings there are per a filing. So for example, if we were to take a look at this orange, which is our traffic and non-traffic, you can see that there are for 2021, 4.5 proceedings for every filing. So every filing that comes in that goes in front of the court on average 4.5 times. This is important for understanding how, again, they set up fees because they use this number and they use an average of this number. Specifically, it is an average from 2017 through 2021 to determine the rate per filing fee. So different filings have different fees based on the number of proceedings that are anticipated to follow with that filing.
And before you go, just trying to read the categories here. It looks like you have, and it could be my eyesight, where you have parking and traffic camera, and then you have parking. From this distance, they look like the same color.
One is a dark green and one is a dark blue, but we can certainly get a table that would
That's fine.
break
That's
this
fine.
down. But yeah, they are very close in color.
So do we have active traffic cameras? Good.
So the first things I did when I came on council was try to get rid of those.
Good.
And so this is likely one of those items that they've recategorized. You can see between 13 to 15 because it was taking into account parking and traffic cameras, and then
Okay.
afterwards just your parking.
Thank you.
Jury trials. I wanted to include this because there is an additional cost per jury trial, but as you can see, from 2016 to 2021, there haven't been a significant amount of jury trials. There were 4 in 2016, and since then there have been 5 jury trials held.
Huh.
So some additional background, the city of Lacey does have a long history of interlocal agreements with Thurston County District Court for municipal court services. The city entered into an agreement from 2011 to 2016, and then another agreement in 2017 to 2022. So we are currently looking to enter into another interlocal agreement for 2023 and beyond. As I mentioned, the basic structure for what is charged to the city depends on filing fees. The city pays for services based on a schedule for each criminal or traffic infraction filed. And this is established as a base with the ILA and then adjusted for inflation annually. And typically there is a cap on the inflation. So, for example, 5% has been used in the past. In addition, like I mentioned, there is an additional fee for the cost of summoning a jury. So there is a jury trial fee. And there's also an annual cap on the total amount charged to the jurisdiction. So on the right-hand side, I've got the example from our 2017, interlocal agreement that shows the filing fees broken down. You can see a traffic filing fee would be $52, parking $50, DUI $367, criminal traffic $207, and criminal non-traffic $285. On the right-hand side, you can see the annual cap that is in the 2017 interlocal agreement. So Thurston County District Court would not charge the city anything over this amount should filing fees go over what was listed in the interlocal agreement. As you can see, these caps have been set at $400,000 or greater for the period of the last interlocal agreement. So service costs, taking a look at municipal court costs, and this does not include our prosecution costs. It does not include our public defender costs, just our municipal court services with Thurston County District Court. You can see our court costs have also, for the most part, declined over the last couple of years. And this is aligned with our filings continuing to trend downward. I do want to say that what is projected here for 2022 is just an estimate. So this could change. But again, the trend is decreasing throughout time since 2014. So with every new interlocal agreement period, Thurston County does a court rate study, and this is the tool that they use to determine the filing fees and the jury fees for the next round of interlocal agreements. So they performed one in 2017 and they performed one in 2022, and they're using the 2022 data to again determine what those filing fees and the jury fees are. It uses what's known as a marginal cost relative weight methodology, which basically means it takes the overall cost of what the service is and how many they think they're going to have to provide, and creates the baseline filing fee or jury fee. So for example, what they use is what's called a multiplier, a proceeding multiplier. And they derive this number from the number of proceedings conducted in and all of the case filings. So if you have something that comes into the courts, that's a filing, that counts as a 1, and then each proceeding after that counts as a 1. So for example, we took a look at this ratio previously. For a DUI misdemeanor, you have the filing, and then on average, 2021, you had 4.4 proceedings. So for the total multiplier for this particular filing, it comes to 5.4. A few things to note in the court rate study, and just to note about courts in general. Like I mentioned earlier, we have the impact of the pandemic. So the past 2 years have not been what we would call normal years. And so certainly it becomes a little bit more difficult to try to forecast into the future, knowing that there have been a few years that might not be representative of the whole. In addition, mental health costs for all of the mental health court costs are now completely funded by the county mental health sales tax. So this is not taken into account in the overall cost for services. Probation services, something to highlight is that probation services saw a increase in staffing, and as a result, the probation office cost has doubled since the last time they did the rate study. And probation services, as we'll see here in just a second, the use closely corresponds to the number of criminal and DUI cases, as all probational clients receiving services would be for criminal and DUI citations. So when we're talking about the allocation of probation services, those get attached to, again, criminal and DUI cases, which is why you see the significant increase in the cost for those filings, in addition to an increase in the number of proceedings. Finally, the court staff has increased to a total of 32.75 full-time employees. So this is an addition of another 4.5 employees. So like I mentioned, you take the total cost of the court, which you can see indicated right here is around 3.5 million. This does not include the probation services, that comes a little bit later. This is just the cost for filings. You divide it by the number of filings and proceedings that had occurred. And again, this is our 2017 to 2021 average. And then through that, you get your cost per filing or proceeding.
So this is just for the city of Lacey, or this Thurston County?
So
The average filings and proceedings
so this is for everybody.
for Thurston County?
Correct. So Thurston County, Tumwater, who also gets municipal court services, and the city of Lacey.
So average per year of 2022 was about almost 64,000 people filings?
So filings and proceedings, and this is the average from 2017 to 2019. So it's not,
Oh.
it's not one exact year,
Okay,
but it's trying to take into account pre-pandemic years,
okay.
which I guess to say they'd be more normal years than what we experienced during the pandemic.
Interesting.
So those are filings and proceedings, and you take that average number per that period of time and divide it by the total cost to get your per filing proceeding cost.
Mm.
But this is just the baseline. You then apply that multiplier to get the cost for each different type of filing. So for example, you've got all your different filing types. You've got your proceeding multiplier, which is again, your filing and the average number of proceedings that you would see per each of the different filings. And then you multiply that per the baseline cost for the filing per proceeding. You've got an additional service charge that's in here. You get your baseline case file fee, and then you've got probation services added on to the filings that have probation services. So again, you've got your DUI, your criminal traffic, your criminal non-traffic allocations for probation services, which gets you your filed case fee. And then Thurston County has taken into account a 3% COLA for the 2023 billable case rate. So you can see moving forward here. There is one minor edit. This is actually a typo. This should be $68 and not $98 for parking. However, as you saw previously, the city has very few parking infractions. So these become your filing fees. Again, typically in past interlocal agreements, they have adjusted annually for inflation, and in the past has been set at a 5% increase. But the proposed rates for the next interlocal agreement base number for 2023 is $77 for an infraction, $68 for parking, $391 for DUIs, $269 for criminal traffic, and $402 for criminal non-traffic. In addition, the jury trial fee, should there be a jury trial, is an additional $136. We are working with the county on the annual cap. We anticipate the annual cap will be less than 500,000, probably somewhere in the $450,000 range. And as far as next steps, we are working with the district court to work on the interlocal agreement, and we hope to have this, brought before the body before the end of the year, so that we have a contract in place for 2023 and beyond. So with that is municipal courts. I thought I would also just take a real quick second and talk about another service within our court, which is our public defense, as it relates to our municipal court. And before I do that, though, I just want to summarize what is in the impact for the city. So overall, the increase for the fees is anticipated to be around 15%. We think that based on past usage, that we will be somewhere around $425,000 for municipal court. Now, obviously, we want to take into account that we have the COVID years, so this could be somewhat of a range. So we think this could be somewhere between 325 to 425. However, I think everything needs to come with the caveat of we don't know exactly what's going to happen in a post-pandemic environment. We also don't know what's going to happen at the legislature this year with the Blake decision or any other legislation that might impact public safety and court services.
So before we go any farther, the last time we had this come before the city of Lacey, we had talks with the city of Olympia, since they provide these same services, and looked at the cost comparison. Why do we not do that this time around?
So you may recall last time when we looked at Olympia, because we were because at that time we thought Thurston County was overcharging for services. And I think even Olympia at that time said, look, if we don't want to go through another exercise, if you're not going to actually go forward and actually doing services with Olympia. And discussing this with Dave in the past, and now Shannon's taken that over. Thurston County has been more realistic in their court fees. And also at that time, if you recall, we were not getting our own court calendar. And so they made all those adjustments the last go round. So we haven't had the same environment that we were going into last time we renewed this contract and had concerns about what services we were. And then to Shannon's point, the whole environment of filings have changed. We don't even think we're going to get to the contract amount that they guarantee as a maximum.
Yeah. Well, so I'm just curious, because since the use of the courts, has gone down, the cost for Olympia stayed static, right? They already have all those people in place. And so they may be in a situation where they could give us even more of a discounted rate since they're not being overused.
If I recall from last time, they would have had to either hire a judge or do some other things, which would also add additional costs to the point where it wouldn't be just something where we would be able to add on to their existing fixed costs.
That's not quite how I remember it, but their costs came in basically the same as Thurston County. I do remember that. But they were also going to offer some more have some different services. I guess my big question is that right now all this is Lacey's being lumped into the rest of Thurston County when it comes to municipal costs. So it's not only what Lacey's doing, but it's what Tumwater and the rest of Thurston County outside of Olympia, right? That always seems weird that we're being lumped in with the rest of the county when it comes to figuring out what the actual costs are. Number one. I'm also curious on who decides when something gets filed or not, because if we're sending things to Thurston County and they're not taking action on it, I'm not sure where the the benefit is. I mean, I'm curious to see. I mean, have we just not been writing as many tickets over the past 5 years as well, or where's that analysis at?
So Mayor Ryder, on the first part, and I know Dave's raising his hand here to jump in probably on the second question, but I do just want to highlight that, yes, there is an overall cost that Thurston County comes up with, but it's also based on our usage for the court services. So it's not a static, hey, you've used X amount before in the past. It is actually based on the number of filings and then the number of proceedings, which to your point could vary between jurisdictions, but generally looking at the data, there is not much volatility between the jurisdictions. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dave.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, Mayor, to answer your question directly, any matters, we have direct filing capability. Law enforcement officers for Lacey directly file. Anything a Lacey police officer files is going to be calendared by the court. Any referral that comes to our office is going to be calendared by the court. There's not any discretion on the part of the court as to whether or not they're going to set anything for a hearing. That's entirely up to the city. The one piece of information I would add, there's been a couple big drop-offs. The most recent one in filings, the most recent one can clearly be pointed to as a result of the pandemic. About 3 or 4 years before that, maybe, 15, 16, somewhere around in there, there was a big push to decriminalize driving while license suspended in the third degree. And prior to that, that was far and away the biggest filing, not just with Lacey, but throughout the state and certainly throughout Thurston County. And the basis for a driving while license suspended third charge, if you'll recall, was that if somebody had fell behind in fines, maybe paying for a speeding ticket, paying for some sort of infraction, if they fell behind in that, then that would trigger a suspension of their driving privilege. And then all of a sudden they move from a failure to be able to afford to pay a ticket into a criminal offense, and then those would compound. So there was a legislative push and a societal push to not file those and to decriminalize those. And so with those off the table, that took away a huge amount of filings. And most of those would take up the criminal traffic. And they were all very relatively minor cases from a prosecutor or a defense perspective. But that's a big reason for that initial drop in case filings. It's not like Lacey's not investigating and prosecuting DUIs or domestic violence or crimes of the sort. So
I just, this, I guess I'm surprised by all this a little bit. Like, if you look at our population growth over the past decade, and our crime rate, according to this, has gone down significantly, right? Because we're not processing, or we're not arresting people, or there's not those infractions. Infractions have gone way, way down. So is that true?
Well, I think policing in general has changed, and I'd certainly defer to the chief on his input on that. But policing's changed over the last several years, which definitely has an impact on numbers of arrests, number of charges filed, et cetera. I think it's a combination of policing, pandemic, and then the impact of driving offenses that aren't being filed. I think collectively is the reason that we're seeing this decline overall.
Chief, are you online? You want, can you add to that? I don't see him. Or is he in the council?
Is not.
Mayor Ryder, the chief is not present,
Okay,
but we can certainly have the chief follow up on that.
okay.
So, and thank you, Dave. I appreciate the addition there with the driving while license suspended 3. So what we did here on this graph that you're seeing, I just want to unpack this a little bit more, knowing that we do have a bunch of unknowns. We did take a 5-year average to estimate the 2023 municipal court costs. And so again, this is just a general ballpark, but you can see each of the individual types of filings and what we anticipate based off of this estimate for them to total in number, as well as total in costs based on what the Thurston County rates are that are proposed. And then in the teal category, you can see our cumulative total, which accounts for around 1,300 filings, which just again, for 2021, we saw around 825. So just wanted to point out and unpack this a little bit more. Any other questions on this, Mr. Mayor or Councilmember Kunkel? So something else I just wanted to highlight in addition to our municipal court is also another important part of our court is the public defenders. And this is something where we have continued to also see a decline. And, you know, for many of the reasons that we've highlighted with the municipal court. And this was a decline that we were seeing just like our case filings that happened before COVID. And this is something that I've seen in other jurisdictions and, you know, have heard is occurring. So just
Could you go back?
yeah, absolutely. So what this graph is showing is the actuals and then a forecast based off of the actuals from 2015. And every single dot on this line is a month in the year. And what you can see, the blue trend line is trending downwards, and those are actuals. And then based off the actuals, we projected kind of what we anticipate to see. Now this we want to update every year as we see it. So, you know, don't be looking into 2025 as something that we can really count on, knowing that there are a lot of unknowns, but it's something we want to take a look at as we continue to evaluate public defense here at the city.
Just interesting to see the spikes in that chart and corresponding with the dates, and you know, it just makes you wonder what's causing that.
Sure, you can generally see it looks like a lot of spikes around the January timeframe.
St. Patrick's. I don't know.
So looking at the cumulative total per year, just again, another way to show that we have been seeing declining public defense cases or cases assigned to public defenders. We anticipate that in 2023, we'll have the need for around 550 cases. And if you look at 2022, at this point in time, we're thinking there will be somewhere between 420 and 520 cases in total. So again, very similar to what we were seeing with court filings, you can see a pretty steady decline throughout each year, even pre-pandemic. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions you all might have about the municipal court or public defense.
Mayor, any questions for you?
Yeah, I guess I'll go on record and saying I was wrong the last time we we looked at the you know, this contract. What I felt like what was going to happen was the city of Lacey was going to continue to grow, which it has, and along with that population growth and what we were seeing sort of on the street, the number of infractions was going to grow along with our population, and that hasn't happened. So it just, I guess I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I mean, we've had some couple explanations, but what if you looked at this data, what this data is telling me is that we have become a considerably safer community from 2015 till to 2022, and it'll continue to be that way. Or we were writing tickets before that we're not writing tickets for now, and that is some explanation. But I'm really curious to see how this compares to our crime rate numbers, because I'm missing something in all of this, which I'm having a hard time figuring out, because I don't think that we are that much safer of a community today than we were 10 years ago. But according to how we prosecute, it definitely looks that way.
No, that makes perfect sense. And you would think that statistically crime would be more of a problem with the higher population. I do think that crime still is a problem. I see all kinds of circumstances that are not being enforced, like shoplifting. You can go into any big store and hang around for a little while and you're bound to see somebody run out the door with something. And it happens to me frequently when I walk into Fred Meyer. So yeah, that is a good question. You know, what's changed? And that might be something of concern that our council should talk about. What can we do to
Well, I just
understand?
hear from the chief a little bit more and have a little more of where we're at. You know, either it's a really good situation, a real good story, or maybe we do need to tweak something. I don't know which it is. I do think property crime or theft we've seen a huge spike in theft through the pandemic, actually, but it's not showing up in these numbers. So I don't know. I'm just you'd say with the increase of population that we've had, which has been pretty historic through annexations and the normal growth, to see these numbers go down so dramatically is shocking, I guess. I don't know what to say about it.
Well, the chief is scheduled to go before council. I think it's a future work session to talk about crime rate in general. We can provide him some initial heads up to provide a little more deeper dive into what the trends are, what's his perspective of what's happening.
And Dave, what's your take on all this? Do you think we were just filing more things that weren't actually helping to the safety of our community, and we just don't do that as much? What do you think the explanation is? This is your office. That's fine,
Yeah, and again, what our office does is prosecute what's filed, right? And so, you know, that's always close to 100%. Again, I think the lack of citations for criminal traffic, that was a precipitous drop. That's a big part of this. You cannot discount the pandemic and the fact that court was closed, you know. And I think coming out of that, you know, I'd be interested in discussing with the chief. I know that, in the Blake decision, and then the you know, in 2020, the effect that changes in the attempted police reform and the changes in police activity and actions has led to just a change in interaction with citizens and how that has impacted whether there's just a discussion and someone isn't cited. You know, that's something I can't comment on. But I think that probably plays a role. Overall, though, I think the big one is clearly the pandemic and the lack of citation for driving while license suspended.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing more from the chief and hearing a better explanation. Like I said, you just wouldn't think with the population increase that we've had that our numbers would go the other direction, you know. So, but I know that there has been a lot of reform that's happened, and it'll be interesting to hear, you know, was that something that they would have written a citation before, you know, 10 years ago? They just don't write that citation today.
Well, yeah, and I guess another one's possession of marijuana, and then a lot of the minor offenses. I'll look at numbers from maybe 2015, and compare and contrast them with like the last couple of years and just see what those distinctions are. As far as just pure numbers. I mean, I know driving while license suspended is the biggest one by far. Possession of marijuana, use of drug paraphernalia, those historically were never really big numbers as far as filings, but they were definitely there that are non-existent now. I'll talk to Matt and Chad and get their input on it as well, and talk to Chief, and whenever that work session is, we'll have some more information for council.
Yeah, especially on the, the more violent crimes like the domestic violence, you'd think some of those numbers would have gone up, especially during the pandemic, and not gone down. But we'll have to look at the numbers a little more closely. I mean, this is just a topic that I think it's really important for us to be conveying to the public, no matter what, which way it is, so anyway, okay, that's all I have.
Okay. And I have no further comments as well. So we are at the end of this meeting, and I will call us adjourned.